Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. Hey, I wanted to share my beautiful orchids that are blooming. They're still blooming. This one's going to open up in the next couple of days. I'm enjoying them, just slowly opening up and adding beauty to my life and my world, right? That's the way it goes. That's a good thing. All right, so we have been talking about so many different things, and I want to go back to a story where Jesus calmed a storm, because when we're talking about peace out, we understand that he is calming. He is still the Prince of Peace when we face things, right? He doesn't clock out. He doesn't check out. And this is a really good example of it. Now I'm in Matthew 8. And Matthew 8 is really interesting because he's come across here. He's already healed a man with leprosy. He healed the Roman officer's servant, which is an interesting story we might have to explore later, because first off, the guy's a Roman. So Jesus shows us throughout scriptures that he's not prejudiced. He didn't tell the Roman soldier, I can't talk to you because you're from Rome. You're not a Jew, right? He even went to Samaria, to people who had been cast out away from Israel and considered worthless. And he went and spoke to the woman at the well, a woman, and not a Jew, not a full Jew, right? She was. It is a long story there. But he's like, there's no room for prejudice in the kingdom. There's no room to say, you can't have God's blessing, but you get it, right? So he didn't draw any of those lines that we tend to see in our world today, sadly, right? And then he heals many people, it says. Then he's just come off the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And now we're in chapter 8, and he's doing all these miracles. He's casting demons out. He's doing all these cool things. And then it says they get into the boat to go across the lake, and he is in a boat with them, and a bad storm came up. And this is in verse 23. A terrible storm came up. NLT says a terrible storm. It was a terrible storm. I'm telling you, it's terrible. Terrible storm came up, with the waves breaking into the boat. But Jesus was sleeping, right? And first off, when he's going to get up, he's going to say, why are you afraid? You have so little faith, which is an interesting statement too, because he just told the Roman soldier, I've never seen this much faith in Israel. He said, I've never seen faith like this in all of the land of Israel. And that was a Roman soldier. And now he's telling his disciples, the ones who are following him, the ones who are serving him, the ones who are traveling with him, that he's not seeing this little faith. So he's seeing great faith and little faith in the same chapter. But none of those, big faith, little faith, prevented him from doing miracles. He says, you have so little faith. And then he spoke to the winds. He rebuked the winds and the wave, and it all come down. And they looked at each other and went, who is this that can do this, right? Who is this that we are following that can do this? What did they think he was going to do when they woke him up, right? What did they think? Were they thinking he's going to stand up and go start crying with them? Oh, no, we're all going to die together. What did they expect? And then they're like, who is this? And something else that stuck out to me about this story this morning as I was reading it and rereading it is that some of these guys were fishermen. They had spent their lives in boats on seas, fishing and rowing, and why were they so afraid of this storm? Was it a really particularly bad, that much worse of a storm? Did they not know how to belt water? I mean, they'd probably been in the boat in the storm before, right? And yet they were terrified of the storm. And some of them may not have been on a boat. Some of them may have never been on a boat in the storm ever in their life, right? So maybe some of it was that fear, that it was just something so new to them. But some of them had experienced it. But here's the thing I want to point out. Jesus was in the boat with them, and the storm still came. Just because he was in the boat with them doesn't mean that they didn't face a storm, that they didn't have this test of their faith, that they didn't have this opportunity to trust him more. Having Jesus in the boat did not prevent the storm. And sometimes in Christendom today, we get hung up on that. We think because Jesus is in the boat, we're not going to have a storm. Because Jesus is in the boat, we're not going to have anything go wrong. Because Jesus is in the boat, everything's going to just click in life. And I'm going to never miss a paycheck, and I'm never going to miss a date with the guy I want, or I'm never going to be sick, or I'm never going to do this or that, or bad things are not going to happen because Jesus is in my boat. Jesus is my lucky charm, and he keeps all these things away. He's not a lucky charm. He didn't keep the storm away, but what he did do was bring peace right in the middle of the storm. Even though he even told them, you have so little faith. So he acted for the Roman officer who he said, I have not seen faith like this in all the land of Israel. And now he healed the man's servant anyway. And now he's looking in the same chapter at his disciples going, you have so little faith, but he still calmed the storm anyway. He was interactive. He was in it with them. And whether they had a lot of faith or a little faith, he knew the measure of faith they had. And yet he still acted on their behalf, whether they had a lot of faith or no faith. I love that about this story. He didn't say, I just healed the Roman soldier's servant because he had a lot of faith, but I'm not going to calm your storm because you ain't got as much faith as he does. Don't you love that? Because sometimes I feel faithless, y'all. Sometimes I feel like I don't have any faith. Every once in a while, I feel like that Roman soldier, like, God can do it. God's going to do it. He's going to get us through this. And I'm trusting in him. But the Roman soldier was like, I understand authority. All you have to do is speak and it's done. And he didn't even know scriptures, y'all. He knew authority. He didn't necessarily even know God because he was a Roman soldier. He was not brought up in Judaism. He was not brought up understanding the Torah and reading the law and understanding who God our Father was. Maybe he knew the story of Moses, maybe he didn't, but he understood authority. And he said, I understand authority. All you got to do is say the word and my servant will be healed. Because he said, I have servants, and when I tell them to go do something, they go do it. I understand authority. Even if he didn't understand Jesus. And then you got the disciples who understand the law. They've read the law. They've studied the law. They had their bar mitzvah when they turned 13, right? And they came up under the law. They understood all of the law. They understood the prophecies in the Old Testament. Maybe not to its fullness, but they knew there was a Messiah coming. And yet they had little faith. But Jesus didn't exclude either one of them. You don't have enough faith for me to work for you, or you have too much faith for me to work for you, right? Or you haven't read the law yet. Go read the law and then I'll heal your servant. Because he said, you understand authority. I get that. He said, I have not seen this kind of faith in all the land of Israel. And he says, many Gentiles will come, because this guy's a Gentile, right? Many Gentiles will come from all over the world and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the feast in the kingdom of heaven. I'm a Gentile who's looking forward to that. That's going to be an awesome thing to sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's telling the Roman soldier, you have the same inheritance as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but I'm off of my topic now, right? Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I'm going to think about that's my meditation point for the day. But this Jesus being in the boat did not keep the storm from happening. But he did calm the storm when it came. Jesus being in our boats doesn't mean everything's going to go perfectly. We're never going to be sick, never going to be without this or that or something else. But it does mean that every time a storm comes, he will bring that peace. And he stayed in the boat. He could walk on water. We saw that. He could have said, I'm out of here. I'm going to walk back to the shore. I don't know. Y'all just do whatever you need. No, he met them in their need, right there in the boat, right there with them, in the storm with them. He met their need. And he said, storm, stop. And they were just like, oh, who does this? Who is this? They had been walking with him. They've been listening to him. They've seen all these miracles. And yet they're still saying, who is this that can calm the storm? They didn't say, who is this who heals a man with leprosy? Who is this man that heals a Roman soldier's servant with just a word? Who is this that healed all these people and removed diseases and it even says they brought many demon possessed. This is all still in the same chapter, you guys, right? That evening they brought many demon possessed people that were brought to Jesus, and the spirits fled when he commanded them to leave, and he healed all the sick. They didn't say, who is this that casts out demons? Who is this that heals all the sick? But then he calms their little storm, and they go, who is this that commands the wind and the waves? That was something bigger than healing someone, than setting someone free from demons, than healing the Roman soldiers with just the word. He didn't even go to the sick servant. He just healed him from there. He healed the man with leprosy. None of these things did they say, who is this man? But the storm affected them. See, they didn't have leprosy. They didn't have a spirit. That might be debatable. They didn't have a demon spirit. They weren't sick. And yet the storm affected them. Now they're like, oh, now we want to know who you are, because we get it. You're in the boat with us when we have a storm, and you calmed my storm. So now I want to know you. It's so important to want to know him, to want to know this man behind all of these words, this God behind all of these words, right? And to know that even though he's in the boat, we're still going to have storms, but he's in that storm with them. He did not abandon them. He calmed the storm for them and blew their mind. I pray God blows our mind today by calming some storms in our worlds. That's my prayer for today, is that we see this soul calming Jesus that lives in us, that won't abandon us in the storm and is with us in the middle of the storm. He's with us. I pray we see him today and we say, who is this? How does he do this? Because he's with me right here in this boat we call life. That's why I'm going to peace out. Peace out, you guys. Have a great day. See you again tomorrow.